Week 1 kicked off with the most disappointing game of the weekend, for me personally at least, in Texas versus Ohio State. Both offenses were pretty lackluster, and the debut of Arch Manning, or the era of Arch as they kept saying in the pregame, was not the best. Arch tried to get some stuff cooking late in the game, but it definitely wasn't enough, and Ohio State definitely clamped down enough times for them to get the win, 14-7. And speaking of trash openings, word on the street is Alabama's soft now. Them boys traveled to Florida State, who was unranked, and got their shit smacked around. The Florida State QB Tommy Castellanos called a shot before the game and said, "They don't got Nick Saban to save them. I don't see them stopping me." Spanked them, and then dropped merch off his own quote after the game. Definitely not the start Alabama wants to the year. We had some notable upsets this weekend. USF cleaned up Boise State 34-7, and the big story from there is their quarterback Byron Brown running over all their players in biker shorts. Iowa State won a close one over Kansas State, and their quarterback Rocco Becht, he had more touchdowns than incompletions. He's a name you should watch out for. The next two upsets were probably some of the best games of the weekend. Both games were top 15 matchups. We had LSU versus Clemson, and we had Notre Dame versus Miami. Notre Dame has one of the best running backs in the nation, a lot of consensus #1 running back in the upcoming draft, so naturally they decided not to give him the ball at all in the first half really. Miami was led by the most outstanding player of the game, and their Jared Verse clone, Ruben Bain. He helped and clubbed Miami's way to a 21-7 lead that they managed to keep in a 27-24 win. And then we had LSU over Clemson, where we had the battle of Garrett Nussmeier versus Cade Klubnik, two of the top QB prospects for the upcoming draft. Neither QB really put up any explosive performances because these defenses are just locked in to begin the year, but LSU managed to come from behind and win 17-10. Tennessee looked good in the post-Nico era, completing a blowout victory of Syracuse. Syracuse is trying to bounce back from losing Kyle McCord, but still early in the season. However, Nico and UCLA now just got blasted by Utah. Don't expect Utah to stay unranked for long because they have a pretty crazy defense. And their QB, Devin Dampier, is somebody to look out for. He looks to be a tank, and he's like a New Mexico transfer, I think. So be on the lookout for them. They're going to cause a lot of noise. Speaking of making noise, probably the talk of the weekend was the freshman quarterback, JKS, they call him. I'm not even going to try his name just yet. But he was lighting it up, just dropping dimes in a win for Cal, and making all the draft analysts cream on the timeline. South Carolina pulled out the 24-11 win over Virginia Tech. Nothing crazy, but Lenore Sellers is a baby Cam Newton, so they're always a good watch. So I'm just going to speed through a couple of these blowout wins. We have Ole Miss over Georgia State 63-7. We have SMU over East Texas 42-13. We have Florida over Long Island University 55-0. We got Texas Tech over AR Pine Bluff 67-7. Am I missing any? We got Texas A&M over UTSA 42-24. And then we got Oklahoma 35-3 win over Illinois State. And then to wrap up our game recaps, we have Penn State in a big win over Nevada. Drew Aller looked pretty good, but the Penn State team overall looked pretty dominant there. And then we also have number 14 Michigan in a win over New Mexico State. It was Bryce Underwood's first start as a true freshman. Nothing crazy, but also nothing bad, so I think it's a good step forward for both of these programs. So I think a general theme this weekend is the teams that scheduled hard games, they got hard games. My guess is next year these week 1 opening great games won't happen as much because the big teams are going to want that tune-up week against West Alabama, Prairie View State. The game to watch for in week 2 is definitely Oklahoma versus Michigan. Oklahoma has their QB John Mateer, and he's a high-end dual athlete, so he'll be flying around, making plays. And on the other side, we have the true freshman, like I mentioned before, Bryce Underwood. I'm expecting him to use his legs more in this game, so it might be a little more interesting. You get to see the full peak powers of both these QBs. Be sure to tune in next week for my week 2 recap.